What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Power Play with CJ. It's going to focus in on the Detroit Red Wings as part of our team previews ahead of the 2016-2017 season. I've been really, I think, kind of unfair to Detroit in the wrong way, if you will, or the right way, maybe, because I've been talking them up, playoff streak, all that. They haven't missed the playoffs 1990, all that shit. If you look at this team on paper right now, they're not a playoff team. They just aren't. They were able to move Pavel Datsuk's cap hit, but then, they're still over the cap. The long-term IR, Johan Franzen and Joe Vitale, so that kind of takes care of itself. But I'm just looking at this roster, and I kind of want someone to punch me in the face so I see some stars. I mean, Henrik Zetterberg's gonna be 36 when the season opens. He was your leading scorer last year. Second leading scorer, Pavel Datsuk, is gone. He's taken his talents back to the motherland. Dylan Larkin, we can all agree he's pretty much unequivocally the real deal. But will there be a sophomore slump there? That's a fair question to ask. And I think their defense doesn't exactly put the fear of God into anyone. You have the artist formerly known as Mike Green. Nick Cronwall's going to be 36 in January. Danny DeKeyser's a good player that signed kind of a overly. I don't think I'm not saying he deserves his contract, but he's kind of now overpaid. So then after that, you got Brendan Smith and some other guys. It's not a lineup that you can expect to be the team you were 3, 4, 5 years ago. I don't want to say it's old. I mean, it's old for this team. I think there's going to be some full scale changes. I think it's tough for a team that's been so good for so long to admit, what. We got to start rebuilding because Detroit hasn't had to rebuild. The last time they missed the playoffs, George Bush Sr. was president of the United States. I wasn't born. I'm assuming most people weren't born. I mean, Jaromir Jagr hadn't even been drafted yet. That's how long ago it was. So actually, he was drafted. The last time they missed the playoffs was 1990. He was drafted in June of that year. So, just a little reference for you. But still, that's how long this team's been playing. And again, I get it's difficult to be like, all right, you know what? We need to rebuild. But it's kind of like the Bruins are in the same spot. And that's not, I already mentioned the goalie controversy. They're not going to be able to move Jimmy Howard. And, he signed for, $6 million for the next couple of years. And Peter Mrazek's taking his job. Peter Mrazek's a better option for this team right now. And I thought they were able to get Mrazek signed to a pretty fair contract. I think some people think that they overpaid for him, but I think it was a fair deal. So, there's some decent young talent. Like, I love Andreas Athanasiou, or Ass in the Seats, because he's exciting. He puts asses in the seats. And I think he's going to be a nice piece going forward. I think, obviously, I've talked ad nauseum about how much I love Dylan Larkin, but it's still like, does anyone really think this team's a threat in the Eastern Conference? I don't. So, I can go, kind of player by player, but I think they're going to be on the outside looking in, and there's going to be an offseason of full-scale changes next year in Detroit. But, I think there are enough pieces to be happy with. I think Svechnikov from Evgeny Svechnikov from Cape Breton can definitely push for a spot in camp, but I think infusing that kind of youth in the lineup will be good. You saw that last year with Dylan Larkin making the team out of camp. I mean, there hasn't been a teenager on the Detroit Red Wings. There hadn't been since Matthew Dantonov, I think, in the 90s. So that's one way of getting a little bit younger. Even the goaltending situation, Mrazek's 24. So again, they're getting young players reps, and a lot of their young guys are pretty good. I think Anthony Mantha will definitely, push for a full-time spot next year. And, there's reasons. They have some nice pieces. But, again, as presently constructed, this team is not going to the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2017. And I know that's depressing to people in Detroit, but it's the reality of the situation. I think that they're a little bit off, but we'll see how it shakes itself up. I know someone's going to ask, I'm just going to throw this out there. Dennis Cholowski, that first-round pick this year, I really, really like. I think he's got a lot of upside. He's at least 4 years away from contributing. So he's not helping their defense this year or anytime soon. He's skinny. I'd like to see him bulk up a little bit more. I think playing college hockey is going to be great for his game. But I do not see him, making this team anytime soon. He's going to be at the collegiate ranks and do some pretty cool. He's going to St. Cloud State, so it's always they get a pretty good track record there. He'll be a good fit with that program, but he's not going to be a Red Wing anytime soon. So again, it's just you look at Detroit, how they had that great run, and in my eyes, it's coming to an end. But it's always weird for me to figure out like when did it end for Detroit, and the strength of their team for so many years was the blue line. Having a guy like Nick Lidstrom back there, guys like that don't grow on trees, and having Lidstrom made them obviously. You see what like Drew Doughty's done in LA, and what Dougie Keith has done in Chicago, and as good as those teams are, where would they be without their all-world number one defenseman? I'm saying with Detroit, he retires in 2012. Even before that, Rafalski retired in 2011, and he was a phenomenal fit with that team coming over from Detroit. They always had a good number two with Lidstrom. I mean, Matthew Schneider for a while. Obviously, going back even further, Chris Chelios, and now it's like. Number one defenseman by default is Danny DeKeyser. Shit, I mean, on the Stanley Cup teams they had, he would have been, their 4, their 5. So if that doesn't explain to you how things have kind of come down in Detroit, but I think the Ilitch family knows what they're doing. It's going to be tough to admit you need to rebuild, but I think Kenny Holland and the Ilitch family can get this done. So. Going to be some lean times ahead in Detroit, but as the people of Detroit have shown us in the real world, they get knocked down, but they get back up. We saw what the city did, in the midst of the 2008 crisis, and now the auto industry's back. So we'll see what happens. I just want to throw this out there. Not even a dig at Kenny Holland, but supposedly they offered Kenny Holland the opportunity to become president of hockey operations, whatever you want to call it. And they would have promoted Steve Yzerman as general manager back in 2010. Given what Yzerman's done in Tampa, kind of intrigued by what would have happened if that was the case. But just throwing that one out there. And speaking of Tampa Bay Lightning, I thought for sure they were going to be the front runners for Steven Stamkos. Just had a gut feeling. Obviously that didn't happen. And I'm curious to see how they landed Stammer. I think they'd be a playoff team next year. But I think a guy like Stamkos would be a Band-Aid over a broken leg, because as great as Stamkos is, he's not a number one puck moving defenseman, and that's what they need. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's all I got in this episode of the Power Play with CJ. Stay tuned for more episodes throughout the off season and beyond. Later, guys.